Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Benefit strategy for attraction and retention. A thoughtfully crafted to the demographic, the company that you're trying, the people that you're trying to attract for your company. Is your benefit strategy the right one to land great people? I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to discuss and deconstruct insights from top-performing entrepreneurs and industry experts. Every week, we uncover tested tactical solutions to solve your company's most difficult hiring challenges. Today, our guest is Ron Herrera, the VP of Consulting Services at the Precept Group, located in beautiful Irvine, California. Ron is a national employee benefits consulting firm and insurance brokerage. Ron is, and actually his firm is, Precept Group. And Precept offers a variety of services, including health and welfare consulting, health management programs, benefits administration and technology, retirement plan services, and more. Ron partners with employees across the U.S. to reduce healthcare expenditures and stimulate organizational culture. Prior to Precept, Ron led human resources operations in a vice president and director role with multiple healthcare organizations. Ron, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thanks, Rick. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to have you, and we're going to cover something that I think I met you. You gave a talk on at Disrupt HR, and so hopefully we can shed some light on a couple things. One, how benefits can drive retention, ineffective versus effective benefits communication, as well as how benefits can help you land talent. So let's get started. So let's talk about how benefits drive retention. Go.
They do. Thank you. Thank you. No,
End of show. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're out.
Benefits, it's funny, for years, benefits has kind of been the stepchild of salary and other items. And so now we look at what's happening in our economy. Obviously, health insurance is so expensive.
Sure.
Healthcare is representative of $1 out of every $6 in the economy. Our legislators are fighting about insurance costs and benefit programs. So at this point, benefits is no longer taking a back seat to salaries in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
So today we're finding that as the cost of benefits rise, so does their relevance from an employment perspective.
Ooh, how so?
So figure 15, 20 years ago when benefits costs were not as high.
That was like 5 years ago.
Well,
it feels like it.
It does. That's a good point. But when you look back historically, benefits didn't represent the dollar amount that it represents today.
Sure.
So as people go either without benefits for periods of time, or they have some realization about the true cost of them, you find that the decisions impacting their benefits or the availability of benefits is much more important. So before, a benefit annually for maybe an employee might be healthcare insurance summing $1,000.
Sure.
Well, now it's easy for a benefit by itself to actually cost $1,000 a month.
Oh yeah,
a month.
Easily. Yeah.
Right. So as that climbs exponentially, again, so does its importance because it impacts people's wallets.
Sure. But how does this help to drive retention? Because we have the company covering the cost of it?
So it drives retention in a few ways.
Okay.
So I would say primarily employers offer benefits to attract and retain, and it's really the cultural norm now. So
well, they kind of have to, right? I mean, because you're not going to attract anybody without them.
Right.
Yeah.
So just offering it is kind of status quo.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to actually stand out from the others? I mean, people have been talking about this war for talent for a long time, that it's coming. Well, it's here now. It's actually been here.
It's been here for a while.
Right. In Orange County, we're below 3% unemployment rate. So by looking at that, you've really got to do everything you can to stand out and to delineate from other employers. And so salary is obviously one way to do it. Benefits is another way. And at this point, since you're expected to pay a salary and pay a benefit, how creative can you get with your benefit strategies? And that doesn't necessarily just mean throwing more money at your benefit plans. A lot of employers will throw ample sums of money and maybe they're falling in terms of not communicating effectively the value of those plans, or seemingly being excited about it. So generating that kind of buzz, it fuels retention because A, it makes people feel really loyal to the employer, thankful that the employer appreciates them, and when the value is communicated effectively, it actually makes it difficult for other employers to poach your talent.
So that seems to me that it would have to be something like a benefit that's above and beyond what normal benefits are. So, for example, most companies offer insurance for you, right? And they'll cover a percentage of you, and then of course you have to pick up your family or whatever else. So I would imagine if you go above and beyond and you cover the employee and their family, and you cover 100% of the cost, that might lock you in, right?
Well, that would be a very, very attractive benefit because it's very rare that employers are picking up 100% of the cost for families. But you draw on a good point. Obviously, when you have a better value proposition, you're going to get better attraction and retention. But my second point is, in addition to just having a better plan, employers sometimes don't do such a great job at communicating the value of their plans. So just by educating an employee or an employee base about how valuable their plans are, they're feeling, like I'd mentioned before, that appreciation and maybe that lack of feeling like they need to look for something else, because what they're getting is really valuable and fantastic. And when employers who might be competing for that talent, maybe trying to poach those employees, if they're not communicating the value of their benefits, even if the value is the same, that perception of value is huge.
Okay. Because I'm trying to keep an open mind here, because I usually focus in on the other aspects outside of salary and benefits, right? Like, to me, that's a little bit secondary from a recruiting perspective. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about retention, this is pretty important. But so what specifically is going to keep somebody there then? Right? Like, what is it going to be the thing that's going to be like, okay, well, it's got to be something that the other employer that's trying to poach you doesn't offer.
Doesn't offer or doesn't communicate.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Right.
So it's really about messaging, in a way.
I think largely it is. Yeah, because most employers that are seemingly competitive in the same space, they're going to have certain expectations that their demographic of employees requests or inherently requires. Medical insurance, dental, vision, life insurance, all of those items. So that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily the fact that you're offering a better benefit, but you might be doing a better job at, to your point, messaging the benefit.
Got it.
And messaging the value.
Okay. Because somebody who's a 22-year-old kid doesn't really care that much about the benefits as much as somebody who's a 40-year-old person with a family, right? So, so how do you target that?
So
how do you build that in for retention? I guess that's what I'm trying to connect the dots on.
So that's a great example. People in different parts of their lives. A 20-something and a 40-something.
Yeah.
So, conventional thinking says the young person doesn't care about benefits, but we're in a new day, a new age. I'm often impressed and surprised by just the acumen that young people bring to employment, especially watching maybe their parents go through such difficult financial situations through the Great Recession.
Yeah.
So that 22-year-old who might be interested in a benefit, the attraction and retention for that person is not necessarily going to be, hey, we offer your boilerplate HMO and PPOs that your parents enjoy.
Yeah.
In that case, it would be, maybe we've got a product or an offering that is tailored to you, like a health savings account, where you may not be utilizing the plans a lot now, but you're able to bank money through this health savings account and grow that money so that in the future, when you've got more complex conditions or situations, you've got actual hedged money to pay for that.
Sure.
So that would be an opportunity to say, whether 20-something-year-olds care about this benefit or not, let's educate them on it and message it so that they understand there's value here. And maybe you came into this interview not knowing necessarily that this is available to you with a company or a position with a company from us, but this is another thing that we do, and it's another differentiator. And that's effectively knowing what's going to appeal to people.
So to make your benefits effective, you just need to communicate them, and you need to communicate them often, right? Is that really the message that we?
So I'd say it's the two-prong. You have to have a benefit strategy that makes sense,
Okay.
and you have to communicate that.
Okay. So how do you communicate it?
So there's lots of ways to communicate. I say make it a culture by talking about it a lot. Inform your employees that where they stand in terms of benchmarking.
Like,
Now,
hey, I just went to the doctor today. I saw the proctologist, and I'm sure glad we have those benefits.
each company culture is different.
Yeah.
That might be okay or it might not. No, but I'm thinking, when it's employees are conditioned to think about benefits at renewal time often.
Sure.
And that's when they tune in. That's when they absorb what they need to absorb, make decisions, and then tune out. So my thought is do things throughout the year that keeps the benefits platform in front of them. Maybe have health fairs, do health and wellness programs, things that actually engage employees, because it's really in everybody's best interest for health to be top of mind. So that's one way I like to ensure employees are being communicated to. There's lots of options for lunch and learns and different things.
Is there any tools that you can use to communicate this information like on a regular basis to your employees as well?
Absolutely. Excuse me. There are electronic tools like employee portals. There's different benefits communication platforms that can be utilized. There are sometimes oh, thanks so much. You read my mind. There's employee. He's like, stop coughing into the mic.
For you, for those of you who are just listening, I just came on water.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
So yeah, there's a lot of different avenues. There's employee newsletters, wellness letters, all kinds of things that you can disseminate via email. A lot of workforces today are on computers.
Sure.
A lot of jobs touch those. So there are videos that can be created and disseminated. Videos are very popular because it actually makes things live as opposed to mundane. So those are all platforms that you can utilize. And I would say the best advice I could probably give is knowing the culture of your company. Certain messages fly much better when they're communicated through the channels that are most in tune with your company's culture.
Sure.
So I would say I've given you some examples, and I would cross those with some of the things that work.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about the strategy side, but we're going to take a quick break. We're speaking with Ron Herrera, the VP of Consulting Services with the Precept Group. We're going to talk a little bit more about strategy and delve into how actually this works in attracting talent. Be right back.
You're listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Higher Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Higher Power with Rick Girard.
Welcome back to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and today our guest is Ron Herrera, the VP of Consulting Services at the Precept Group. So we just discussed how benefits drive retention and kind of how they're effective from a communication standpoint. Now we're going to go into a little bit more into the strategy and as well as how benefits are going to help land talent. So we started talking about a little bit about the strategy, having a good strategy. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's say you're a small, medium, large-sized company, like different phases. Is there different strategies for different phases of a company that you should probably attend to? My thought is when you're a startup, man, the benefits are important, but they're really not as important as a larger company, especially when that's something that I tried to decentuate more so than the content of the work. But I'll let you speak about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good way to look at it, because the different life cycle stages of a company is really going to point to different strategies, and things grow and fail in importance.
Okay, so let's say I'm a startup. Series A, I just got my first round of funding and I need to get some benefits in place. What should I be looking at?
So if you're a startup, and let's just say 10 employees.
Sure.
or less.
And you're looking to build right now. Yeah.
Right. You know, your focus is going to be on growth,
Sure.
and other things that are a little more top of mind. So from a benefits perspective, you're still hiring employees, and employees need benefits.
Yeah.
So what happens a lot at that pace is, employers might utilize a strategy where they'll incur like a health reimbursement account, an HRA.
Okay.
And they might fund that account. Now, granted, they're in startup mode, so they don't have tons of money.
Yeah.
So they might put some seed money in there so that employees can go out and get their own benefits. But the employer is still contributing something so that it's making that leap a little bit less daunting.
Got it.
So that's a pretty common strategy when you're of that size, or a really smaller company.
Okay.
Very
Got
small.
it. What if I've already decided, okay, I'm going to start buying healthcare for everybody and making sure that they're covered, at least a percentage of it, I would imagine.
Sure. So if that's the case, there are certain avenues that you can go to. Like, again, for very small employers, there's options like CalChoice. CalChoice is a platform with opportunity to provide lots of different carriers with different options that caters to the small group, the small employer group size.
Got it.
And so what it does is it gives employees that feel that they're getting more of that larger employer experience, lots of options, tailored, and that's how employers can compete in that smaller space.
Got it. Okay. So then what would be my next phase?
So I'd say,
is there anything else that I would need besides just health, dental, vision?
when you're at that small size, those are the true ones. I mean, medical insurance is always going to be like the most important and the most costly benefit. So providing access to affordable care there, that's going to be predominant. Dental, vision, and I would say in that order, medical, dental, vision, and then typically, I mean, you can tailor if you want to have access to life insurance programs or not. They tend to not be very expensive, just like traditional life. But once you swell and you're now around the point of 50 employees, in fact, let's say you're at 50 employees and you've hovered there for about a year, you now qualify to be an applicable large employer. So what that means is the Affordable Care Act is now applicable to you. So
at 50 employees.
At 50 employees.
Okay.
So all the regulations.
So stay at 49 as long as possible.
So there are certain things that come into play at that point.
Sure.
And it's an interesting place for employers because you're not at the size that you're able to offer truly robust benefits that incorporate aspects of underwriting and all the things that make up for a complex benefits offering. That typically happens when you're at about 100 employees. So let's say now you're at 100. There are a variety of options that open up to you. Carriers have more to be able to offer. You've got different benefit designs to choose from.
Does it lower your healthcare cost per person?
It can, yes, it can.
Because if you're
operating in a larger space.
If you're a 50-person company, what are you expecting to spend on healthcare?
Well, let's see.
Is there like a general rule of what I should be expected to like for every 100 people I'm going to spend X or something?
So not necessarily, because in that space at that size, the rates are really going to be age banded.
Are they?
So depending on age, that's going to populate the rate. And there's really not a lot of
Which is
flexibility
probably
there.
why a lot of startups like to hire younger people. It does cut down the...
I'm sure
I'm
some
sure it's
might
not a
think
consideration, but I mean, it's maybe the CFO thought about it.
For the folks in startup mode that I know, I mean, they're so focused on growth.
Yeah.
They're looking at how they increase, revenue generation and funding. And so, they're not looking at how they save pennies on the back end. Not to say no one has done that.
Sure.
But I think that once you hit that 100 platform, certain pods start to open to you. Now, once you hit 500, and I would argue, even counting my own point, sometimes employers get to this concept a little earlier, but once you hit to 500, now you really should be looking at developing synergies around your population.
What
the
does
concept.
that mean?
So that would mean like the concept of self-funding, or level funding. So self-funding is where an employer decides that they're going to become their own insurance company.
Okay.
So instead of procuring insurance through a fully insured plan through a carrier, they set up administration and fund claims themselves.
Okay.
They'll usually ensure that there's some stop loss coverage so that if a claim exceeds a certain amount, it doesn't take down the company. There's insurance to cap that expense.
Do they supplement it typically with outside insurance as well, or no?
Typically it's no. Typically it's the stop loss, and then that's all contained within the plan.
So this is an option you can do, but what's the percentage of companies that actually do it?
So once you hit 500, I wouldn't want to give a loose percentage, but I would say 500 is typically where you'll see employers start to kind of dip their toes in the water.
Got it.
I can tell you that of our clients that are of size, like 1,000 and more, we hover in the high 60 percentile range, close to 70%.
Okay.
So jumping to that 1,000 threshold, let's stay there for a minute. So at 1,000 employees, you've now got some padding in your plans. The law of large numbers is active, so you've got some sick people, but the majority of your people are healthy, and so they're
What's the law of large numbers for all of us who didn't know that?
Well, basically the larger your sample size, the more predictability and reliability you can see happen with claims or just existential events.
Okay.
So in this space, that's where oftentimes it does make sense for employers to look at self-funding very seriously, because since it's a large number, let's say 1,000 employees, that's a lot of money that you would be paying to the insurance company.
Yeah.
So if you're able to,
awful amount.
Yeah. So if you're able to actually, put those stopgaps in place to, prevent catastrophe, and do things to hedge your risk, and this is where the things that we do at Precept Group are kind of unique. We'll actually implement programs that help identify and care for the people that are really sick on the plans.
Okay.
And so that's a strategy that really you should be looking at when you're self-funded, especially at that amount, because there's enough people who are sick to develop a lot of opportunity for savings.
Okay.
Plus, you've got the opportunity to enrich people's lives by helping them exit sickness.
So I want to jump back though really quickly to that 50-person company, because that's most of our listener base is usually in that 20 to 100-person range, right? So
Sure.
what's going to be most relevant in retention at the point when, okay, so now we're at 50, let's just say now we're at 100-person, right? What's going to be the things that really get your workers to be like, hey, like these are the benefits right now that I can't walk away from. They're amazing. At
that 50.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
what should be offered maybe in that 50 to 100 person range?
So what I would advise, or what I advise my clients, when you're in that space, you're trying to identify kind of, again, what makes you stand out. So knowing your competition.
Sure.
And when you're in that smaller size, I wouldn't expect that a lot of them are offering some of the benefits that are not boilerplate. And, this is where things like, flexible spending accounts come into play, or, pet insurance.
Pet insurance?
Have you heard of pet insurance?
No.
Oh, let me tell you, it's very popular. So people love
their here in Newport Beach, I'm sure.
Yeah. So people love their pets. It's like children to them.
Sure.
And so there are carriers or companies that provide this kind of access to discount care in what's called pet insurance.
Okay.
And so what that does is it enables the employer to provide something of value to an employee, as to where maybe it's something that doesn't apply to all of your constituents, but to some. And that's a benefit that you may not expect would be available in a smaller company. And so what that does is it gives the allure and the appeal of a larger company by offering benefits that are maybe a little more boutique, offering a legal plan.
Okay.
Offering access to discounted mortgages or insurance through personal lines.
Okay.
And not to say we want to flood small employers with all these different benefit plans, but I think an employer who's small enough to be nimble in their decision making, and which really makes, I think, a lot of the environment fun to work in, attached to a benefit strategy that makes it feel like you're not sacrificing anything by working for us, a small employer. We're giving you all the access to benefits that your larger competitors would. That's a great place to be in.
And just to clarify, a ping pong table and a foosball table are not benefits.
I love that you said that. I'll agree with that. Well, let me back up. There's benefits that
perks.
are boilerplate, and there are benefits that are perks, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'd say if you've got room for a ping pong table or a foosball table or
A go-kart track, why not?
all that stuff,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
I'm sure some employees will love it, but that's not what's going to attract and retain.
Yeah.
That's going to make the day fly by a little bit faster.
I'm fascinated by the pet insurance. So what other like kind of obscure things do they offer that could be of benefit to somebody?
Sure. Well, I'll describe something. I don't think it's obscure, but it is something that I think is kind of nuanced and it's coming out more and more. And that's programs that are more financial well-being related.
So anything about like life insurance?
A little different than that.
Okay.
So let's say there is an opportunity for employees to meet with like financial advisors or counselors, not necessarily people that sell things, but people who specialize in helping others incur or alleviate debt,
Okay,
or develop other financial aspects.
Okay.
So it's a benefit. They call it financial wellness.
All right. So then let's go to the last burning question, which I know we're going to have fun with, which is, so how are benefits going to help to land talent? Now, you and I have a different view on this one. We might be putting on our boxing gloves here for a minute, but give me your you actually told me some really interesting ways, and let's talk about that. So what do you think is the number one way that it helps to? Well, I'll let you run through. Go.
Sure. Communicate.
Sure.
Message what you've got. Demonstrate you're excited about it. Now, I used to not differ too far from you. I mean, I was an HR executive for years.
Sure.
I didn't start my HR career leading with benefits either. Right? But what I've seen, the power of benefits and the ability to impact the larger business strategy, when you create a benefits strategy that truly is designed to attract and retain, once you implement that, you actually can measure the difference. From a recruitment standpoint, I've noticed days to fill improves.
Okay, how?
You don't have offers sitting out there forever. When you've got, and you also don't have employees who are not necessarily engaged because you're not communicating or offering a benefit or a particular strategy that's engaging.
I can see that if they're going back and forth and saying, hey, and I really need pet insurance, and you don't offer it, right? That might be something that, hey, look, we offer pet insurance and everything else. I mean, it definitely cut down the decision-making process, right?
Well, I would say pet insurance doesn't usually make or break the deal.
No,
it sweetens the pot.
It may for some people. You never know.
That is true.
I've had the most random things that have broken up things before.
That's true.
But I will say, not having any insurance or any benefits whatsoever, and maybe just giving somebody the option, like, well, we'll reimburse you up to X amount of dollars, is not a good benefit strategy. Because I've seen that in my professional career. I've had companies that have done retained searches with me that were looking to fill a VP role, and we got down to that conversation, and it doesn't fly with somebody who's got 5 kids.
Well, and it doesn't fly with individuals either with no kids these days.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think the expectations are that you provide a benefit that's similar to what they can get at a different opportunity. But
so I'll agree with you. I think I can see how it can reduce the time to fill the days because you're not going back and forth.
It does. You can also see evidence in exit interviews, like when people leave and they're interviewed and asked, well, why did you leave? How much better is the opportunity you're going to? That's something that you can see too. I've noticed that. And not necessarily, it doesn't have to only represent the turnover rate decreasing, but the prevalence of benefits being part of that reason decreases.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did reduces days to fill. What are the other ones?
So it reduces your days to fill. And I think by and large that would impact your cost per hire just based on the time that it takes.
Okay.
Maybe you're hiring people like Rick because you couldn't fill it yourself through your HR team. So there's a lot of costs that are associated with time and opportunity costs.
Yeah, okay. But probably not anything that you can kind of stick a number to, right? I mean, it's all kind of...
I think cost, days to fill, I mean, that's a leading metric from a recruitment standpoint for a lot of organizations. And I think, your cost per hire as well. I think that, there's... the longer a position sits unfilled, the more likely you're going to pay more to actually fill it. So I think they're all related.
Well, the longer a position remains unfilled, the more money it costs you. you're losing money for each time, like, in cost of work not getting done as well.
Well, that too. But from my experience too, I've seen that employers are willing to pay more because they get to that point where they just have to fill it, and they're going to have to go to a salary amount or enhance some aspect of the offer where they wouldn't necessarily have had to do that had the package been pretty solid.
Cool. Final thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that a lot of employers realize the value of benefits after they lose someone for citing that reason.
Yeah.
So my final thoughts are, benefits they should be a low-hanging fruit. It should be something that sweetens the deal. It's almost kind of like a baseball analogy. Your salary is your starting pitcher, right? That comes out of the gate. The salary doesn't always close the deal. You need a strong relief pitcher. And I think benefits is a great closer, because when you offer a strong salary, strong benefits package, and you message it, people feel really good about the opportunity.
Boom! There we go. I like that. All right, so we're just about out of time for today's show. Ron, thanks for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community.
Thank you. Had a lot of fun.
So I'm sure there's going to be people out there who are going to be interested in reaching out to you. How do they get you?
Yeah, so I am at the Precept Group. So my email is rherrera@preceptgroup.com.
Spell Precept Group.
Precept Group is PRECEPTGROUP.com.
All
yeah,
right.
I'm also on LinkedIn, Ron Herrera. Reach out.
Sounds good. Spell Herrera.
Sure.
Sorry.
HERRERA.
Okay, so Ron Herrera. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer Paul Roberts, our producers Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. To listen to this show and any past episodes, you can check us out at Hire, that's HIRE, Power, POWER, Radio, RADIO.com, or Higher Power Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. Follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook at Higher Power Radio Show, or you can follow me on Instagram at RickGerard1. So we have another great show lined up for you guys next week. Our guest is going to be Lynn Taylor. He's the founder and CEO of Taylor Protocols. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Gerard on OC Talk Radio.
Let's face it, not all company